Well, hello, everyone. Well, hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. Let me just tell you what this show is about. So, this is the show where we like to have real talk about real things. We like to talk about things in education, employment, mental health, physical health, all things hot and steamy, all for the purpose of your education, of your learning, as it's this podcast is a part of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So my goal is for you to learn something and for you to be better than how you were yesterday. And I have a guest with me who's going to help me out. She's actually returning to the show. She was with me before on our episode I Grew Up in a Cult. So check that episode out in our archives. But she's actually, well, it's not in our archives. Nothing's in our archives. It's all out there. But check out that previous episode. It's called I Grew Up in a Cult. I Grew Up in a Cult. That's the title. And I encourage you to check that episode out. So let me just tell you who the guest is that is actually returning to the show. I love it when they come back. Her name is Alesia Galati. And let me just remind you about who she is. So she runs a full service podcast management company. You record, and her team does everything else. She also helps business owners launch and maintain lead generating podcasts. She lives in North Carolina with her husband, her two small boys, and a rescue pup. And when she's not working, you can find her hiking, chasing her kids around, or watching the latest Star Wars with her husband. Beautiful. All right, so I'm hearing my phone. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Alesia to the stage. Hi, Alesia, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm very excited.
Thank you for coming back to the hot seat, back to hot topics. All right, so oh my God, I didn't even say the title of the episode. All right, so I'm so sorry, you guys. Before I get to Alesia, I totally forgot the title of the episode. The title of the episode is Homeschooling Part 6. So this is actually the sixth time that I have brought this topic to Hot Topics. I love it when I bring the topics back, and Alesia is going to talk to us about her homeschooling experience. So I just wanted to interject with that there. All right, Alesia, sorry about that. All right, so yes, the topic is homeschooling. I'm bringing the topic back. I wanted to get your perspective on it. So tell us about your homeschooling journey. How is it? How's it going? What are you doing? All that jazz.
Yes, so my journey is a bit interesting in that I was homeschooled myself from sixth grade through 12th. And so I did not have an enjoyable experience with it. If you listen to the past episode of Growing Up in a Cult, it did take place at the cult. So a lot of the things that I learned and homeschooling in general just kind of had this history to it for me. And when my husband and I had our kids, he was like, "Hey, I don't make enough where it makes sense for me to continue working. One of us needs to stay home with the kids. I'd be more than happy to do that if you want to keep working since you're making more money." And I was, of course, 100% down with that. It made financial sense for us, for my husband to be a stay at home dad. And it made sense just from a how we wanted our kids to grow up and having us in their lives at those younger ages. So when they got to school age, and our kids are now 9 and 6, when they got to the beginning of school age, we were considering, do we want to homeschool them or do we want to send them to regular school? So because of my past experiences, I honestly, homeschooling wasn't even an option in my head of something that I wanted us to do. And I really was like, no, 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 they're going to school. It'll be great. And my husband was like, well, actually, I'd really love to try homeschooling. And I was like, "What? Are you sure? Like, it's difficult being with your kids 24/7 and them never leaving, you know?" Um, but he was like, "Yeah, I wanna give it a shot." And so he absolutely loves it. He does all of the homeschooling. I do not get involved unless I absolutely have to. And that was kind of one of the stipulations, right, of when we started it was if he wanted to homeschool, then I would continue making money. And so that's kind of how we've balanced this out. I know you probably have tons of questions.
Well, yeah, let's start with one thing that jumped out at me was that we talked about in our previous episode, you were homeschooled because you were in a cult. So it was interesting how you hated homeschooling and then all of a sudden you end up doing it yourself for your own family. So tell us about that shift.
Yeah, when we had started homeschooling, now this was we are looking at 6-ish years ago, there weren't a lot of curriculums, at least that I knew of, that were secular curriculums. And that was one thing about homeschooling that is typical that people think, oh, kids are the ones who are homeschooled, which tends to be how it is, right? And so a lot of the curriculums tend to be church based or faith based or whatever. And we wanted one that was not. And so we did some research, some looking around, and we found one that was secular and had no religious affiliations or anything like that, and was a learning through reading, which my oldest absolutely loves doing. So it was learning through reading and doing. And we found that that curriculum, we did preschool with it or pre-K, and that worked really well. And then from there, we were like, okay, I mean, I guess we tested it out. Let's see if we want to keep going. And honestly, it is something that we check in very regularly on, not just for the kids, but also for my husband, right? Like he is with them all the time, every day. And so we do these quarterly check ins of is this still working for everyone involved? And I think that that is really important in like making the decision to homeschool. It's not a this is the only thing we're going to do till the end of time, right? It's this is what's right for our family and for our kids and for us right now. And that might change next year, and that's okay.
So what state are you in?
I'm in North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay. I think from my understanding is that North Carolina is pretty lenient in the homeschooling laws. Um, so I might double check that. I think it's pretty lenient in the homeschooling laws. So let's talk about your setup. How are
Mhm.
you doing it? Is it your husband? Is he doing all the teaching? Is he going to co-ops? Are you bringing tutors in? What's your setup?
Yeah, so our setup right now is that my husband does most of the teaching. If we do need to have additional like resources or if he needs to bring me in for like math stuff because I love math. I'm really good at it. So if he has to bring me in for that, then I will if I have to. But typically he will be the one doing most of the teaching. And the program that we use is called Bookshark, and it's a full curriculum. So they have lesson plans for, I want to say it's a 4 weekday thing. And you're right, the laws for North Carolina are very lenient. You have to pass standardized testing, keep letting them know if you plan on homeschooling, like you can't just flop back and forth. You have to let them know what your kid's doing, and you have to keep attendance. So those are pretty much the only things and like the requirements that we've seen so far. Granted, our kids are younger. Like we're at the first year where we've actually had to tell the state, "Hey, this is what we're doing." Um, so yeah, my husband does most of the schooling. We did do co-ops before COVID happened where they had meetups with the local community, but a lot of them are religious, right? And so they'll have like Easter programs or, Christmas programs, and they tend to be very religious based, especially being in the South I'm originally from. New York, from Syracuse, New York, and my husband's from New Jersey. So it's a very different down here for us, with there being, 5 churches within a 2 mile radius. So a lot of them do tend to be more faith based. And so we weren't integrated a lot with them, but we would try to do some activities like when they would go to the local fire department, we would make sure we tagged along to things like that. And then we do a lot with the library. So our local library has a lot of resources for homeschooled kids and a lot of day activities for homeschooled kids. We do that. We live about an hour south of Raleigh, so there's a lot of museums in Raleigh that we can go to. We can always go to the zoo, so we go there. We have the membership to go there, and then about 2.5 hours is the aquarium. So any way that we can like get them really interacting and engaged, we do that.
So now, how are you dealing with, one of the issues against homeschooling is socialization, right? They're not socializing with their peers. They're kind of stuck at home and they're cut off from the world. So how do you address that?
Yeah, so our kids, because of their age, socialization isn't too much of an issue at this point, and because they have each other as well. Our youngest is in speech therapy, so he goes twice a week for that. And so he gets interactions with other kids within their group quite often. And then the older one, he did a year at a public school. And so he has some friends that way. And so my husband will do meetups with his past, like now that he's not homeschool, now that he is going back to homeschooling, he'll do meetups with them at the like on weekends, or do over the summer. We've met up a few times with some kids that he used to go to school with.
Oh, okay. So another thing I wanted to bring up is you mentioned it a couple of times that your husband is the one doing all the teaching and you're the one working. So there so your husband is a stay-at-home dad, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk about that, and because you seem to be bending gender norms there. So tell us about that and how that plays into homeschooling.
Yeah. So, like I said toward the beginning, when we were making the decision who was going to be staying home, one, I don't want to stay home. Like, I have zero desire to be managing my kids every day, or be in their faces or them in my face. I'm just really not interested in that. And I love working, and I always have. So, when I became a mom, I knew as soon as I was done with my maternity leave, I was going back to work. Like, there wasn't going to be anything that was going to keep me at home. And that was just something that I definitely didn't want to do. Now, my husband, he did not like working, and he did not get any type of fulfillment from the jobs that he was doing. And so when the opportunity came of like, we either have to pay, thousands of dollars a month to have our kids go to this preschool, or you can be home and doing your own thing, what are we going to do? Like, what are our options really when we're just handing over a paycheck, when he could just be home with the kids? And our insurance was through me anyway. So it did, like, all around, it just made sense for him to be home. I did not anticipate that that would mean he would be like, hey, I'm kind of done. And I really find a lot of fulfillment in being a dad and in homeschooling our kids. And like, I check in with him regularly, like, are you sure you get fulfillment from this? He's like, yes, I do. And I'm like, all right. I mean, we're able to make it work. Why not? And I think that one thing that I think is very interesting is that, like, I grew up with a single mom. And so it was always like the mom doing the work, where's the dad kind of thing. And so I like that we're kind of flipping those norms, right? My husband had two working parents. His dad was a cop and his mom was a nurse. So they were split shifts where one was home and the other one was working, and the other one was working and the other one was home. And so to have both of us be very involved, us very, very involved, is really different for both of us and something new. But it really just seems to work. Communicating that is, and being able to say, hey, and checking in. How are you doing? Are you good? Cool. that really helps to keep it beneficial for everyone involved.
So is there ever, do you have that working mom guilt, and that you're working all the time, your kids don't see you, they're gravitating to dad more than mom? Like, do you ever have that guilt?
So when I was when my husband first started homeschooling, and like we were doing the actual like we ended up moving about an hour from where I was working. And so I would have to drive 2 hours every day getting to work and getting home from work. So I would leave before the kids got up, and then I would get home when they were already getting ready to go to bed. And so during that time, and that was about a year, that was really hard. And I definitely felt a lot of like guilt, but I also knew that we were contributing in our own ways, right? So to be able to give our kids what we were trying to give them, I had to work, right? Like I had to do the thing. And then I was able to find a job where I was able to make more money and work 30 minutes from home, right? So was able to find a balance there. And then when COVID happened, now like I'm in my home office. So now I see my kids all the time, which is like sometimes a bit too much for me because I'm like, look, I just need you guys to just be quiet. You sure you don't want them to go to school? Okay. But it tends to work out. And now I see them all the time. And I don't feel that they gravitate towards one or the other of us. Um, I think we talk very openly with them about like mom's got to work so that we can have our things. Dad is with you, being able to allow you to have these experiences that you wouldn't be able to have if you like had to go have a school schedule or if you had to get up and come home and all these other things. So we're very open with them about that kind of stuff.
So how long have you guys been homeschooling?
We have been homeschooling since our oldest was in pre-K. So I want to say when he was 4, we started like doing like an actual structured homeschooling. So 5 years.
Do you see yourself going through until the end, like actually going to high school and graduating them and making the transcripts? Do you see yourself going until the very end?
So this is something that we've definitely talked about quite often of like what that decision is going to look like. And I honestly, at this point, it looks like either middle school or high school will be the point where we will transition them into a different plan than what we're doing now, mostly to ensure that they do get as boys, they get those interactions that they need with other people and seeing other people and they're not weird, those kinds of things, but also access to certain sports. I know with when I was homeschooled, there were a lot of sports that I wasn't able to have access to, that my brothers weren't able to have access to because we were homeschooled. And so we want to make sure that they have access to those, access to different teachers that are able to teach them different things, things that we can't teach them, right? Like, yes, I took physics in high school. It doesn't mean I want to teach my kids physics, right? Like someone who actually does this for a living. So I believe the plan at this point is that once they get to that middle school, high school level where they will have access to a lot more than what we can offer them, that we will transition them into either a public school, a charter school, or something like that.
So it's like you're gonna keep homeschooling until like middle school, when you get to those difficult subjects and you guys feel you're not comfortable teaching it yourself, or you don't want to seek like a tutor, for example. You would rather transition them to a public school.
Yeah. And just giving them whatever we can't, right? So at this point, we feel that we can give them everything that they need to learn at this level. From that point, excuse me, I don't know that we will, right? Like there's just a lot more resources and a lot more access to things that my husband and I just won't be able to do, especially with them being 3 years apart and being at different grades and things like we want to be able to make sure that they have everything they need to succeed with whatever they go on to do with their lives. And right now this works for that, but it most likely won't work for middle school, high school level.
Ah, okay, all right. So, what do you tell people when they ask you, "Hey, what school does your kids go to?" And you say, "Oh, we actually homeschool them." What do you tell people? How do they react?
Yeah, I usually just say my husband homeschools them because I do not I give him all the credit because I know how difficult it can be to homeschool kids, whether they're yours or others. One thing that I did do when I was at the cult was that I did end up teaching a first, second, and third grade class for a few months. And good Lord, that was hard. It was so difficult. And they weren't even my kids. I can't imagine trying to do that with also being the parent and just that different dynamic that that can create, the additional fighting that goes involved with getting the things done. So I give him all the credit. I say, "Oh yeah, my husband homeschools them," and they're like, "Wow, that's so cool!" But it's actually not that strange in down here at all. Most people just kind of "Oh, okay, cool," and keep it moving. Yeah, there are so many homeschooling families around here, and we also live outside of a military base, so there are some homeschooling military families. It ends up being not as weird.
Oh, so it's sort of like you're already around people that are uh that are homeschooling already, so it's sort of like it's just like whatever.
Yeah.
What about your own family? What about your brothers? What about your husband's siblings? I don't know if he has any.
Yeah, they don't really see anything weird about it, especially at this age, right? I think if we continued through high school, there'd be some head tilt, wait, what? But at this age, because they are 9 and 6, it's kind of we're looking at fourth grade and first grade, and that's not as weird for homeschooling as most people think, I think.
Oh, so it makes sense. Like, oh, they're young. It makes sense,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You're concerned that it might start to look weird if it's when you start getting into high school.
Yeah, that people would be more inclined, I think, to have opinions.
Which is influencing your desire to transition them to public school when they get to that age.
Yeah, well, I don't really care what other people think. We're always going to do what's right for our family. But I do think that when it comes to the stigmas around homeschooling your kids, that when they're younger, it's more normalized and normal, especially when you have a kid who is speech delayed, right? Because they do not get a lot of that help in the pre-K kindergarten level, at least in North Carolina and where we're at, there's not a lot of help for kids when they're speech delayed. They have to go to a speech therapist and they have to go do the separate things. And so to juggle all of that, plus your kids, plus working, it just ends up making more sense to homeschool them. So when they're at this age, it's not as, I guess, the normalization is there, but when they get older, it tends to not be as normal, where I think people would maybe look at us wait, you homeschool them? Interesting. But yeah.
Okay, okay. Oh, we got a question here. We have our first public question from Robin Simpson. Hey, Robin. She says, "How are you going to transition them to public school?" Would you like to answer that
Yes.
one?
Yeah. So one thing that we did when we moved, so my oldest did do 1 year in public school for second grade. And the reason being that there was just a lot of strife at home between my oldest and my husband. They were butting heads a lot, and my husband was like, I don't know that I can keep doing this. I kind of been losing my mind every day. And plus, we were doing a lot of appointments with the youngest one. And so it made sense for us to try to send him to school, really focus on the younger one, give him what he needed, make sure that my oldest one was being taken care of, and then go from there. And so the way that we transitioned him was that we just threw him in at the beginning of the school year. So that way it would be a building of whatever he had been learning previously. One thing that we definitely make sure of is that when we're teaching them at the level that they're supposed to be and what we would expect them to be in a public school. So that way there isn't a big transition for having to go to a different, like a new curriculum or things like that, or learning things that they're like, wait, I've never learned this before. They've already learned it all. They're good. Right. So I think that is the main thing, is making sure that the transition isn't one of like, oh, you're there at the beginning of the school year and they've never learned it. Making sure the curriculum's there, but then also for getting them engaged with other people. The school that we have is pretty relatively small. So he had maybe about 20 kids in his class, and they had separate classrooms with like multiple grades and stuff like that. So he had 20 kids in his classroom with one teacher. And so it wasn't too weird. Whereas find that once we get to middle school and you kind of have that separating and the new schedules, that would be the time. And that way I don't think we'll just jump them in at high school where they're like, what am I doing? I don't know what to do, right? Because they do a lot of that kind of practice of separating the classes and going from one class to the next at that middle school level. So those are the things that we're thinking about in transitioning them from homeschooling into being successful with a public school or a charter school or whatever we decide. I hope that answered the question.
So now I'm just thinking about it, because I feel like your kids would be so used to the homeschool, and then all of a sudden now they're in this new environment. So how are you going to? Oh, Robin said thank you.
You're welcome.
um, so my thing is, they're so used to um like the homeschool environment. Daddy's the teacher, we're home, and then all of a sudden, daddy's not the teacher. Now it's this random stranger, and now there's all these kids, and now there's all these schedules, and daddy's not cooking food. Now we have to eat the school food. So I'm just wondering, like, how are you guys? Do you think they'll be able to handle such a switch? And
I
how are you
think, yeah,
preparing them for that?
I think they'll be able to handle it. One thing that we definitely, excuse me, did struggle with, and that our oldest struggled with when he did do that year at public school, was the time limit on the amount of time he was given to complete an assignment. Right. So he would be like, all right, I'm going to complete this assignment. Cool. Where at home, it was like, finish the assignment. You finish the assignment. You're done. We're moving on to the next thing. There wasn't really a like, this needs to be done within a 30-minute window because we're moving on to the next subject. And so I think that is something that we can definitely work on to do better to ensure that they are able to handle those time limits that they're going to get when it comes to moving to a different like environment like that. For the teacher side, we do have it where like there is a transition from morning to like morning breakfast, get ready for the day, into the school day, into the break, into the finish of the school day, into the end of the day. And so we do have that structure, and they do have like um one thing that I definitely pushed for my husband to do is having a schedule, right? Because if it's like, hey, we're going to do school today. Okay, what are you doing? What time are you doing it? Like, I know kids thrive on actually having a schedule, knowing what's coming next. And so we do try to prepare them in that way as well, of ensuring that they understand and can keep to a schedule, learning their time that way, as that helps with that too. Um, yeah, those are just some of the ways, but I'm sure there are going to be things that they're going to struggle with in the transition. We'll be here to support them as they need it.
So now, what about your husband? Will he be able to handle the transition? Because now kids are not home and now it's just him by himself and he's not working, so, and he wouldn't be working. So how will he handle the transition?
Don't know yet. We'll have to see. Anytime I mention it, like, "Hey, the kids are going to school," like, are they're gonna go to school eventually. What are you gonna do? Like, what are your plans? Thankfully, we're at a point where he does not need to work if he does not want to, so that is good. We're talking about potentially getting land, and he wants to get farm animals. We'll see about that. But, like, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. I think it'll be interesting. He's definitely not coming to work for me. That's not gonna happen. I think I need some separation. Um, but yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, even when they go off to college, I know that's gonna be a difficult time for him too. He gets, like I said, so much fulfillment from being a dad and from being homeschooling dad and being with them. Like he just loves it so much. And so I know it's gonna be a difficult time, I think.
There's a lot of changes coming, so there's a lot coming for you guys. It sounds like,
Yeah.
but it sounds like it's like I sense that you're ready for it, but also we're not sure what's gonna happen. We're kind of just gonna roll with the punches. Is that the sense I'm getting?
Yeah, I do think that's accurate. We never thought that we would be sending our kid to public school in these first years of homeschooling, but that happened, right? And so I think that if by doing these regular check-ins with everybody to make sure, is this still working? Is this still beneficial for everyone? I think that allows us to really be flexible and say, "Hey, I don't think this is working anymore," or "Hey, this is working still. What's the plan going forward?" And so I think being having those check-ins regularly really helps, but it does lead us to tend to be more flexible with what our decision is going to be.
So now, because your husband is the one doing all of the teaching, so is there? I mean, it sounds like you trust him completely with him deciding what to teach.
Yeah, so we do follow the curriculum that Bookshark offers with, like, this is the grade, here's everything you need for that grade, here are all the subjects for that grade. We have also started adding in other book like curriculum things, whether they're interested in them. So our oldest, he's interested in coding and like computers. And so we're like, all right, we can find some coding classes that he can do virtually or some coding things that he can learn where he can start learning to code. Cool. That's not something we can teach him. We can always go to the bookstore, go to the library, get library books on coding, whatever we need to be able to let them kind of explore those interests. So that helps us with that. But yeah, I do trust my husband where, we discuss what they're learning and what the structure and the curriculum looks like. But for the most part, I stay out of it.
All right. Oh, we got another public question here from Robin. Upon entering school, are they tested for grade level?
Yes, they are. So at least in North Carolina, when we did transition our oldest to second grade in public school, they did test him and they were able to see that he was advanced in certain things, that his reading comprehension was a little delayed, which we had already known from what we were doing, that like, hey, we need to work a little more on this. And so they did work on with him on the reading comprehension, and also were able to put him in accelerated classes for the things that he was doing really, really well in. So they do, at least in North Carolina.
All right. So now for one of your sons, you talked about that he has a speech delay.
Hmm.
So, I mean, IEPs wouldn't apply to your case because you're homeschooling, but you obviously are aware that he has a speech delay. So, what services? And it's very common, in talking to other homeschooling parents. I find it's very common. One of the reasons they homeschool is because of the child has learning disabilities. So now, how do you address that? What are the resources for addressing speech therapy, but without going through the school system?
Yeah, so we go to a private speech therapist. And so usually once he were to get to first grade, they would actually have one in school that they could have him go to. With the one that we've been having him go, I want to say he's on 3 or 4 years now of going to speech therapy. So we go regularly. And because of the insurance we're on, he gets tested. I want to say it's every 3 to 6 months, every 3 months or every 6 months, where they have to do an updated test on where he is, what his progress is, and we're in collaboration with the speech therapist. So at the end of every session, and he goes twice a week, at the end of literally every session, she'll say, "This is what we worked on. This is what you can work on at home." And so that helps us be working in tandem with whatever she's working on with him to ensure that he is getting well rounded with the speech. And he has made leaps and bounds since he first started going. I mean, hopefully, right, in 3 years. But obviously, there's still more things that we're working on, and we push him even though he's like just going into first grade. Like, he's beyond what he needs to be on like the math side. Like, he knows multiplication and things. So like nurturing where his interests are and also working with him on the places where he does struggle.
So now, how did you become aware of his learning disability?
Yeah, so when he was 1, we started to notice that he wasn't, especially after having a kid, and I'm also the oldest of 5. So, like, I've been around with a lot of kids with different levels of delays, and when he was 1, I was like, "I think we might need to go." We definitely checked in with his physician to get a referral and see where he was, where he needed to be, and then by the time he was 2, we were like, this needs to be worked on with a professional. And so we started having him go.
So your experience being around other kids and you being a mom and just noticing, wait, something's not developmentally right here. Let's have him seek a therapist. So you
Yeah.
found somebody privately. How did you find out about them?
Through my physician. So the kid's pediatric physician,
Oh,
we discussed it with them. The learning, not just his speech, like his learning is great with things that are not speech related. But like, hey, what color? Where point to the one that's blue? He'd be like, got that. Yep, done. Like, his mental capacity was good, but it was just the getting the words out. And also like certain textures or foods. And so we knew like there was just certain things that were bothering him. And so we wanted to make sure that we could, hey, where can we go to discuss these things and get these things situated with a professional? Because we know I have never had to deal with that. My husband's never had to deal with that. And so we're not certified to do that. Let's make sure that he gets the care that he needs. Went to his physician and told them, and then they gave us the referral to the place that he's been going to since. And we really have enjoyed working with that place.
right. And then insurance covers it, obviously.
Yes.
All right. Fabulous, fabulous,
Yeah.
fabulous. Well, we covered a lot of ground today. I think we can start to wind things down. So now I like to, as you know, you were on the show previously, you already know, but I like to ask my guests about words of wisdom that they'd like to share with our audience. So, Alesia, do you have any words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Yes. So if you are considering homeschooling and you're like, I don't know where to look, and you're finding that a lot of the resources tend to be more religious based, which is definitely what we found. I would definitely recommend checking out Bookshark to see, because I really enjoy their curriculum and it's a more secular based one. And our kids have seen a lot of success with their program.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, another question just came to me. I know your
Yeah.
issue. You said the issue with co-ops in your area is that they tend to be faith-based. So you thought about starting a co-op that's more secular?
Um, So I would not do it because I don't want to be I
You
don't
don't want
want
to be,
another thing to be involved in.
or your
And I
husband, he can just start a co-op, get all the
right.
dads together and have a
Yeah,
dude teaching type, dudes teaching their kids, why not
you know,
just
my
have a
husband
co-op?
is the only dad in that shows up to any homeschooling things. And so it would just be really weird for him to be like, "Hey, I'm starting this thing with all these wives." Not that I don't trust him implicitly, but I think he would feel a little uncomfortable doing that.
All right, all right, all right, all right. Well, Alicia, thank you for coming on Hot Topics, and thank you for
Yes.
coming back and talking about your journey. This is great.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, so it is promo time. So let's get your promo up. All right, you guys. Oh, no, I forgot your podcast, but that's okay. All right, so uh Alesia Galati, you guys, you can find her on multiple platforms. I encourage you to follow her on Facebook. The account name is Alesia Galati PM. She's also on Instagram with the name Alesia.Galati. She's also on LinkedIn. It's just her name, Alesia Galati. And she's also on Pinterest. It is Alesiaga. So all of that information, of course, is at the bottom of the screen. Oh, wait. Oh, Robin said nice. Sorry. Just want to make sure I got that comment there. Thank you, Robin. All right, you guys. So you can find Alesia in multiple platforms. I encourage you to follow her and learn more about her. Well, speaking of you, tell us about your business and what you do.
Yeah, so I have a podcast management agency and we help business owners use their podcast to generate leads. And so we help them support them with the planning, the content, monetizing, all the fun stuff. And I have a podcast called Listeners to Leads that talks through some basic things to help podcasters that are struggling with those kinds of things, but can't afford to work with us just yet. So if you are a podcaster, highly recommend listening to that show.
All right, beautiful. All right. So I just put the link. There you go. So listen to Alicia's podcast. I just put up the link on the screen, but I will read it out loud for the podcast people. It is www.listenerstoleads.com. So I encourage you guys to follow her podcast and subscribe. Definitely check out those episodes as well. And if you guys are interested in starting a podcast, managing a podcast, do you guys do like marketing as well, or you help with
Yep.
marketing and outreach and all that? All right, so do you help with like sponsors, ads?
We do not help with the sponsors. It usually tends to be business owners who are looking to monetize their podcast using their own businesses.
All right. So if you guys, maybe you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're a business owner, and excuse me, and you're looking to incorporate your podcast into your business, use it to bring leads to your company, reach out to Alesia. Let me just put up your contact information one more time. All right, the information is there. So if you're looking to start a podcast for your business, or you're just looking to start a podcast, you need help managing, setting up, content creation. Sorry, I'm just throwing that out there. Do you do content creation?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. So if you need any of that stuff, reach out to Alesia. She does those things for you, and she helps you with that stuff as well. And if you've missed anything that I've said, don't worry. The information will be in the description, but it is on the screen right now for my video people. And once again, I'm going to remind you guys, subscribe to her podcast. It is called Listeners to Leads. The website is on the screen, but I will say it one more time. It is www.listenerstoleads, all one word, .com. All right. Well, Alesia, thank you again for coming on Hot Topics.
Yes. And if you guys listen to my show, Gabrielle will be on there shortly in October. So yay for that as well.
Yes, I was on your show and you're going to release it in October. So,
Yep.
I love it when we do the podcast swapping. It is awesome. All right. Well, thank you again, Alesia, and I will place you backstage. All right. And now it is you and me. All right. I'm just going to. Okay. All right, you guys. So we have reached the conclusion of yet another episode. Thank you again for joining me on Hot Topics. So let me just take a moment to remind you that Hot Topics is a production of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you are, as we're talking about homeschooling, hey, did you know that you can seek tutors if you're homeschooling your kids right now? So if you are a homeschooling parent and maybe there's just something you just can't teach, right? And you need to seek outside help, why not consider us? Consider a step ahead tutoring services. Reach out to us. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. We cover a variety of core topics. We do math, reading, writing, science, history. We start as young as kindergarten. We go all the way up to 12th grade. We even do college students as well, adult learners, but particularly for homeschooling parents. We start from kindergarten, we go all the way up to the 12th grade level. So if you are looking to supplement your child's instruction, and maybe you just need another teacher, there's something you just can't teach, but you don't want your kid in public school for whatever reason, seek our tutors. We can help you. Check out our website, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are on multiple platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Now Twitter is called X now. So we're on X. I don't even know what to call it, but find us on what was formerly known as Twitter. But we are on multiple platforms. So just type in A Step Ahead Tutoring Services and we will pop up. Look for the pencil with the gray and black tip. That is us. So you can find us on multiple platforms. You can call us, you can text us. But the best way to learn more about us is through our website, which I will say once again, it is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. So if you're looking for any kind of supplemental instruction, we do one-on-one tutoring, test prep, college counseling, editing, and proofreading. Hit us up, you guys. We are available. And I also want to take this moment to encourage you guys to drop a comment in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts about today's episode. It helps our algorithm. Did you not like it? Did you like it? Whatever it is, drop a note in the comment section or in the comment thread. Whether you're listening to this on a podcast or you're watching this on video, leave a note down below. Let me know your thoughts about today's episode. All right, you guys, thank you again for joining me on another episode of Hot Topics. I look forward to you joining me on the next episode. Thank you guys again. And now, as always, I am signing off. Bye, guys.